Good evening and welcome to the CFB Nation podcast. I'm Trevor Trowbridge. That's my guy, Vince D'Addario. And we're coming tonight with a new segment that we're going to do here on CFB Nation called the Spread Option. And we get a lot of different questions. If you guys are familiar with us, we are also on the Irish Breakdown podcast. CFB Nation is brought to you by the Irish Breakdown podcast, which you see Vince and I on regularly. But we get a lot of questions about bets. We get a lot of questions about different odds, and we thought with this new season rolling in that we're going to get some things jump started on the CFB Nation channel. We're going to talk some betting tonight, folks. What this is going to be, it's going to be a reoccurring show every Thursday night during the season. We're going live at 8 p.m. Eastern. Give some of the West Coast people time to get off work. I know, Tommy Guns, you're out driving around wherever you are at this point, but I know that you always need a good podcast to listen to. But we are going to be diving into some bets. Now, the format's going to be a little bit different this week, because it's week 0 and then you have Labor Day next weekend. So it's going to be a little bit of a moving piece, and we're going to figure this thing out as we go along. But Vince, I'm pumped to do this, man.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this show for a little bit now, and I'm pumped about it because it's not a genre that we necessarily embrace over at Irish Breakdown, which is cool because it's a different style of show, right? And we're going to touch on some different things and have some fun with it and really kind of jump into this thing as amateur bettors and guys that really want to jump into the weeds a little bit more. I think everybody in between there is going to be able to get something out of the spread option. Like, that's the plan, because, I'm your very casual bettor. I'll put $5 here down, $5 there, on a parlay that pays out big time and lose a bunch, but then win that big one that gets me all fired up. So I keep going. You know what I mean? And so, that's the kind of bettor that I am. I know that there's other people out there that are really just analyzing everything and, have all the stats down and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to throw stats at you. We're going to throw trends at you. We're going to do all these kinds of different things. And I'll be honest with you, some of the stuff that I pick, it's just based on gut, baby. Like, I'm going with, gut feeling and how I feel, that week, and maybe how I feel about that coaching staff, or, the trends of how they're playing. Everybody has different ways that they put down bets, man. And the disclaimer for me is going to be, listen to our show. Let's have some fun with it. Don't put your mortgage down on anything that we say, but we're going to come at you with what we believe for sure. But, I don't want to be blamed when you're going to bankruptcy court because you bet everything, on one of our locks of the week or something like that. You know what I mean? So I want to put that out there as a caveat. But Trev, this is something that, like I said, we've been talking about for a little while. Really been looking forward to, and we're going to come at you guys every week, 8 o'clock on Thursdays, get you fired up for this week's games. Of course, this week we're not going to talk any Notre Dame, as we generally do, but as the weeks go on, of course, we will have some Irish flavor in there as well, because frankly, that's usually what I bet on. So it's because it's what you bet on, what you know, right, Trev? So this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, man. Listen, before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, CFB Nation. Share it with your friends and family. Doesn't just have to be for bettors. This is just one segment that we're doing in here called the spread option that's going to be carried over the course of the season. There's going to be a lot coming your way as the regular season goes on. This is going to be a really fun show to do come playoff time. I can guarantee that. That is going to be a lot of fun. But I wanted to give a little bit of an insight into how the show is going to be formatted. I'm sure that everybody listening is going to want to know, hey, if I'm tuning into this, what is this going to look like?
And we will also, sorry, I don't want to jump on you. We will also kind of explain for the very novice bettors out there, what is a spread? What do these odds mean? All of that stuff. We can throw that out there to be a quick explanation, kind of like I said, quick explanation on what the heck we're talking about. Because I'm sure there's going to be people that are jumping on just because they love our beautiful faces and they want to watch us talk. But we will help you to explain kind of what betting is, and the bigger the plus number, the better the odds of you losing, frankly, but the more money you could win. And so we'll explain all that to you guys as we go. But I just wanted to let everybody know, like, you don't have to be, a degenerate gambler to watch this show. Like, where this is entertainment, we're gonna take you along with us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, absolutely. So how we're going to break this down is we are going to this show's going to look a little different. Normally, we're going to start this off talking about what we hit or missed on from the week previous. But unfortunately, as we all know, there was no football on last week, or at least no football on worth betting on, unless you felt like betting on a Bengals or Colts preseason game, I suppose. Not my cup of tea. I don't like betting that much.
That would be almost the definition of a degenerate gambler right there if you're betting on preseason NFL football.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it. But I didn't.
That's how much you want football right now in your
I'd
life.
Be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about it, but I didn't. So normally every week we're going to start out with a hit or miss segment. But today we're going to dive right into what we like to call the countdown. So we're going from 4, 3, down to 2, down to 1. So what does that mean? Every week we're going to pick 4 games. And within those 4 games, we're going to talk about the big 3, spread, money line, the over-under. And then each game we're going to talk about 2 player props. Then we're going to talk about 1 bet that we're staying away from. We're doing all that for 4 games. Once we get through that segment, we are going to talk a little bit about our locks and our drops, meaning what are our locks for the week? That means something that we are confident that is going to hit, or at least confident beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm like 65% sure, I guess, that it's going to hit. But in all seriousness, lock, something we're very confident in. Drop is something that we're just not putting on our bet slip, something that we're just not confident in. We don't like it for this reason. And then we're going to end it with our dog of the week. And it could be underdog for the win, or it could be underdog covering the spread. And we'll get into more what that means. So just to give everybody a window in, that is what the show is going to look like week over week. The things that we talk about within those categories could change. But Vince, I'm ready to dive into this thing, man.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's jump right in with our countdown here with game number 1.
Game number 1 for us. Now, mind you, week 0, I'm sure we're all happy that there's college football on. And as much as I'm sure everybody wants us to talk about, the Fresno State game, which we may or may not, but we're going to get us started with Farmageddon. And that's a game that's kicking off in Ireland. That is between Iowa State and Kansas State. That game is going to be on at noon on ESPN. It's the first game of the college football season. I know that I'm stoked about it. There we go, Tom. You don't have to wait much longer. You do not have to wait much longer. But basically right now where everything sits, we're going to start breaking down the big 3. Right now, the spread for the Kansas game is Kansas State at -3.5. So what does that mean? That means that Kansas State is currently favored to win by 3.5 or more points. So if you want to put in a bet and you think Kansas is going to win, but you think they'll win by that margin, then you place your bet on they hit spread, right? Unfortunately, the tough thing about spread is if they win by 3 and they don't win by 4, bet doesn't hit even if they win.
Yep.
It's just kind of the gambler's luck, I guess you
right.
could say. But if you wanted to just focus on who wins and who loses, that's what the money line is for. Right now, it's Kansas State money line at -162. It means they are favored to win the game. Simply put, money line is just if you think they're going to win, you bet Kansas State money line. If you think Iowa State's going to win, you bet Iowa State money line. And then over-under is the total amount of points scored in the game. And the over-under right now is set at 50.5. So if each team scores, let's say Iowa State scores 26 and Kansas State scores 25, and you bet the over, then you hit your bet. But if the final score is 17-10 and the over-under is set at 50.5,
you way lost.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, Vince, you way lost.
You knew you were going to lose at the beginning of the 4th quarter. That's how bad of a loss that one is. I'll tell you right now.
You got to pray for a shootout. But this one's a little bit interesting. Iowa State last season was 8-6 against the spread in 2024. I thought that was interesting. And if you go back and you remember some of the games they played last year, they picked up a lot of ugly wins. You wouldn't have thought that based on watching Iowa State play last year that they were 11-3. And yet somehow they were. They found their way in the Big 12 championship game. They got ran out of the building by Arizona State, played Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and because Cam Ward didn't feel like playing in the second half, Iowa State rattled off a crazy victory.
That was a weird game because of that, and there was a lot of professional bettors out there that I'm sure were appalled by the fact that he only played in the first half when the game was tight, and he decided that was it. And I'm sure there was a lot of people throwing things at their television sets at that point, Trevor.
No, absolutely. One thing that I should have covered in this, which is my apologies. Right now, all of the lines that I'm talking about here and all the numbers and odds that I'm talking about are from FanDuel. So FanDuel is currently sponsoring the Irish Breakdown podcast, which is awesome. They're partnering with us for the 2025 season. So all of those odds are through FanDuel. Now, I saw somebody in the chat, Michael Cannon prefers DraftKings. I also use DraftKings. I know there's some states where some of that stuff isn't available. Like I think down in Florida, you have to use Hard Rock Bets. I've had to download that a couple of times for various bachelor parties that I've been on. Look, man, I said I was debating about betting on preseason NFL football. Okay.
Yeah, you put yourself out there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm holding on to the not degenerate status yet, but we may or may not be getting close. But out of the big three, Vince, what are some of the things in here that kind of intrigue you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a pretty big Kansas State fan in general. I think that they are, obviously they're favored to win. It's 3.5. The biggest, like if it's a neutral field, which it is, I like Kansas State, obviously. The thing is, this neutral field is over in Dublin, Ireland. And taking that into account is a very interesting piece of this entire thing, Trev, because, it's easy home and away and, those kinds of things, home field advantage. Usually teams get a field goal for home field advantage, those types of deals. This is the ultimate neutral site, and you never know how teams are going to operate when they have to pick up the entire process, take it overseas to another country, and just immerse yourself in the environment and everything that's going on. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you got to play a football game too. And so you have to take that into account. How are these teams going to, respond to the fact that they're playing in Ireland, right? I think on a neutral field, I might even have Kansas State a little more heavily favored, to be perfectly honest with you. That's how much I like the Wildcats here. But 3.5 is a good number. And obviously, I like Kansas State on the money line to win the game outright. And that's what the money line means. It means I just think they're going to win outright. And I also like them minus 3.5 because I think that they are the better team. I wouldn't be surprised if they won by a touchdown. So that's where I'm leaning as far as this particular deal is. I think Kansas State's a better football team. Now, can they prove that? Like I said, picking everything up and going over the overseas, we'll see. They're even enough matched that the team that handles the travel and all of those extra things the best will probably come out on top. I just think Kansas State has that advantage, and so that's why I'm taking the Wildcats in both of the money line and the spread.
I'm with you. I like Kansas State in this one too. The thing that's really intriguing for me is the over-under set at 50.5. Iowa State last year ranked number 41st in the country in points per game. They averaged 31.1 points per game. Kansas State, they were the number 46th ranked team in the country in points per game. They averaged 30.8. If we know anything about the Big 12, Vince, they're not a big fan of defense. And games, for whatever reason, going back to like 2013, it felt like the final scores in Big 12 games were just always 48-39 and something crazy. So whenever I look at Big 12 matchups, I always look at the over-under to see where it's set at. And there's one that we're going to talk about later today that is a crazy over-under. But I think one thing that I'm going to take on this one is Kansas State. Well, one, I'm taking Kansas State spread. I think they win by at least a touchdown. And then I think I'm going to take the over for this game. Run a little bit of risk there because it's the first game of the college football season, so things could be a little sloppy. But if there's one thing that we know about the Big 12 is that they put up a lot of offensive points, a lot of points. So that's another intriguing part to this game too.
I will say one last thing before we get to the player props is it almost feels a little lazy by Vegas on this one, because the last time that these two played and at the end of the regular season last year, the total score was 50 points. And the over-under set at 50.5. Like, I don't know how much they dug into this thing to decide where they're going to set the over-under. But they're like, oh, wait, these guys just played and they scored 50. We'll set it at 50.5 and see where things go.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet weather played a factor in that game, too. I think it was at Iowa State, wasn't it?
No, it was cold.
Yeah, cold, not ideal conditions. Now, last year, I think it rained during the Georgia Tech-Florida State game, so that might play a factor. But who knows? But that's going to cover the big three for the Iowa State-Kansas State game. Let's dive into some player props, Vince. And what's one of the player props that you like for this game?
Well, I always go to quarterback first. That's just one of the things that I like to look at. And there's a lot of buzz, obviously, and there has been a lot of buzz around Avery Johnson. And they have the over-under, or for him, for passing yards set at 198.5. So if you think he's going to go out there and do some business through the air and hit that 200 mark, or even 199, you can take that at minus 114. I think that's a good bet because he's passed for 220 against this defense specifically last year, and then he only went under 200 yards one time in the final 8 games of the regular season last year. So I feel like this number's a little bit low, and so you want to take advantage of that and hit that over. I think he goes over 200 in this game. I think that's an easy one.
I am right in line with you. Sean Kelly beat me to mine. Rocco backed over 17.5 rushing yards. I saw that this morning, and I thought that was extremely, extremely juicy. When it was at the line this morning was set at over 16.5 rushing yards at minus 114 odds. So last year he rushed for at least 23 yards in each of his last 5 games of the season and went for 35 yards and a touchdown against Kansas State last year when they played. I get nervous about quarterback rushing yards in college because sacks go against your rushing yards, unlike it does in the NFL. So that's one thing they're always keeping track of. Another little nugget for you is Kansas State probably has one of the better defensive lines in the Big 12. It's another thing to keep your eye on. But I like Rocco Becht for over 16.5 rushing yards. It's kind of how he got a lot of wins last year. He's that gamer type of quarterback. He's not going to drop back and throw for 325 a game to beat you. He'll kind of do it in a, rush for 45 and a touchdown, complete 58% of his passes and throw for like 210, that type of quarterback. But I like Rocco Becht for his over in rushing yards.
So what you're saying is he's like Riley Leonard Jr. is where you're at.
Yeah. Riley Leonard Jr., slightly more passing yards, significantly less rushing yards.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's how I view Rocco.
So, Trev, the next part of this is one to keep away from. What stands out to you in this game?
I always get nervous betting on running backs and a team that's running back by committee. And that is very much how I view Iowa State's running back room between Abu Sama or Carson Hansen. Those are their 2 running backs. And what we saw last year is they ride the hot hand, which makes it extremely tough for us bettors because, you could look back at previous stats and, hey, Carson Hansen's gone over 60 yards each week the last 3 weeks. Well, all it's going to take for Sama is one breakaway run of 20 yards or more, and he's in for the rest of the game. So last year in the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Miami, Hansen had 16 carries for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Sama had 3 carries for 13 yards. But when they each played Kansas State last year, I think one went for 53 yards and the other went for 60. And so just in general, my philosophy is when it's running back by committee, I typically stay away from yards. Anytime touchdowns is different because you can just have goal line backs. Think of like the Detroit Lions. I'd stay away from yards when I'm betting on them. But David Montgomery and anytime touchdown scorer last season was kind of a lock.
Yeah.
So, but for this game, I'm staying away from any running back bets, man. That's where I'm at.
Fair enough. Let's move on to our next game, and that would be the Sean Steyer special because it's Fresno State at his Kansas Jayhawks at 6:30 kick on Fox. Let's hit the big 3, Trev. We got the spread, Kansas favored by 12.5. We got the money line, obviously Kansas at minus 520. So what minus 520 means there's not going to be a whole lot of return on your dollar if you just bet the money line for Kansas. And then the over under also set at 50.5. So what stands out to you, my friend?
Yeah, I mean this one's a little tough. I mean, Fresno State last year they ended 6-7, Kansas ended 5-7, but ended on a hot streak. Basically, their success comes down to how good Jalen Daniels is going to play. Boom. I like Kansas State spread at home at minus 12.5. Again, Big 12, they put up a lot of points, and Fresno's defense last year was not that great. And I'm not really expecting it to take many jumps heading into this year. And this is kind of the prove-it year for Jalen Daniels, right? Vince, you and I have talked about that before. I know Sean Steyer's sitting at home stewing about it right now. Just thinking about what type of season that Jalen Daniels is going to have. When he's healthy, that offense is humming. Yeah, I mean, they knocked off Colorado late in the year last year. I think they lost to Kansas State. They might have beaten Iowa State last year. I'd have to go and pull up their schedule, but they picked up 3 big wins to end the season. Unfortunately, they weren't bowl eligible. But for me, the thing that sticks out the most, again, I like the over-under here. This just screams high-scoring game. In 12 games last season, Kansas went over 50 points 9 times against quality Big 12 opponents. Fresno State also puts up points as well. So out of the big three, I really like the over-under here. The money line makes me a little nervous. One, I just don't think the odds are good enough to bet on because
Right.
Kansas is at minus 520 for their money line.
It's not worth it. It's not worth putting the money down. You're not going to win enough to make it worth your while, basically. Yeah.
Nope, not enough. Any different thoughts on the big three for you, Vince?
Nope, I'm there. I think a generally a good rule of thumb, and so since we're kind of teaching here a little bit, I think a good rule of thumb in the Big 12, you're generally going to hammer the over when it comes to these over-unders as far as total points are concerned. But, obviously it's game to game, but I would say a rule of thumb is with Big 12 games, probably going to be hitting the over. And Vegas knows that, so those numbers are going to be higher, but points are kind of at a plenty in the Big 12. Generally speaking, we'll see what happens this year, but generally speaking, that is the rule of thumb that I would give for Big 12 games for sure.
Well, let's jump into some player props here then, Vince. Sticking along the lines of Jalen Daniels, I really like his over 33.5 rushing yards at minus 114. So last season, he eclipsed that mark in 5 of the last 6 games in 2024. Again, it comes down to his health. From everything that I've read, he's been healthy this offseason, looking to put it together in his 6th year. Sean Stires is praying. And I really think that when this offense is humming, he is a true dual threat quarterback. Similar to some other quarterbacks we've talked about in this offseason, I think he still kind of does his best work from the pocket. But Jalen Daniels can absolutely use his legs. I really like the odds of his over rushing yards at minus 114 because of what he did last year.
And he will be on the move. Whether it's designed, whether it's just things breaking down, I do think Jalen Daniels will be on the move. And I think a lot of that is where he just excels. And so I love that, taking the over on 33.5 rushing yards. And the thing is, in college, obviously sacks count against those rushing yards, which is where you do have to be careful. So if it is a drop back kid and the O-line is not very good, you have to be careful about that because they may actually in design runs and scrambles get over 30 yards or 33.5 yards, but then you got those sack totals, right? And so you do have to be a little bit careful when it comes to college football. So that is something to keep in mind. But I do like that one with Jalen Daniels. He's just an athlete. He's going to get out in space and he's going to make some people miss. And I just think that 33.5 is a low number for him. One interesting thing, since we're kind of teaching here, like I said, is you can move some of these lines a little bit to help your odds as far as making it so that you win more money if the odds are in one direction or the other. So, for example, the over-under is 50.5 right now. If you just move that 2 points higher, so 52.5 points, Trev, you're in plus money. And so that's plus 114 on FanDuel, which those are great odds. You can make some money doing that. You can double your money up. And so, doing that, if you're confident that they're going to go over 50.5, only upping it by 2 points, you can win a little bit more money on the deal. And it goes from minus money to plus money. And that's kind of where you want to be.
There we go. Forgot the mute button. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about two teams that have very okay defenses. Very middle of the road. Again, Kansas is a Big 12 team. Fresno State was not known for having a good defense last year. You go and look at some of the points that they allowed last year and some of their losses. Against Michigan, a very dormant offense. They gave up 30 points to Michigan. They gave up 30 points in a win to Sacramento State. They gave up 59 to UNLV. They gave up 28 to Colorado State. So this is a defense that will give up some points. And then again, Kansas is going to put up some numbers on offense too. And so I really like that one. Vince, what are you staying away from in this game?
Well, I tell you what, rushing yards, like you said, it can be an interesting deal. So Bryson Donaldson and his rushing yards are set at 62.5 yards. Fresno State has a rebuild offensive line, a new offensive coordinator, and Kansas has one of the better D lines in the Big 12. So that's kind of a shaky one, especially first game of the season. Until we see maybe a little bit more, I don't like that number. And so I'm staying away from that one until I see more from this offensive line, more from this new offensive coordinator. This one worries me a little bit. So I'm not touching the yardage on the ground for Bryson Donaldson.
Yeah, you and I are in the same boat there. Kansas has one of the better D lines in the Big 12. I know Fresno State's not in the Big 12, but that is, I think, far and away the strength of their defense. And so I don't know if I trust the Fresno State offensive line that much to get him the yards he needs. Plus, I also think Kansas could be up pretty big at some point in this game too. And so I think they'd go away from the run pretty quickly. Let's talk about the first two games that we talked about are on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch the Fresno State Kansas game at 6:30 p.m. on Fox. The next two games, the final two games that we're going to cover here real quick, are next Thursday. Since we go live every Thursday, a couple of these kick off before we would go live.
Yep.
And there's some pretty good games, so we want to make sure that we get some numbers out to everybody. So the third game is number 25 Boise State on the road to start their year against South Florida. Vince, this one's an interesting one.
Yes, it is. It's a very interesting one. And this is a lot of people are billing this as a potential sneak peek into maybe, who's going to represent the group of five, all of those kinds of different things. And this is a big test for Boise State right out of the gate. But they are favored in this one by 6.5 points. And the money line has Boise State sitting at minus 225. Which is interesting. And then, of course, the over-under is a high number. It's set at 63.5. What do you think about that one, Trev?
Yeah, the over-under for this game is really interesting, but I went and did some digging, and here's why. So last season, the over-under was set at 60 or higher in 8 of the 12 regular season games for Boise State, and the over hit 5 times. So last season, USF played 2 ranked teams and gave up 42 points to Alabama and then 50 points to Miami. Now, I don't think Boise State without Ashton Jeanty has the Alabama offense from last year, nor do they have the Miami offense from last season. But USF also scored 63 points against Tulsa. They scored 44 against Florida Atlantic. They scored 59 against Charlotte. So moral of the story is this may be a very, very high-scoring game, but with something that's this high, I don't know if I trust an over-under of 63.5. So out of the big three, I like Boise State spread at minus 6.5.
Okay, I like that. I don't want to give away my one keep away. For me, it's the over-under. This number scares me. This is a big number. You did some great research on, what they've done in the past and all of those different things, but opening games, defense is usually ahead of the offense. Usually, they don't have Ashton Jeanty. What is Boise going to look like from a scoring standpoint? I know they bring back their quarterback. They bring back a lot of guys, but they don't bring back their star. And so are they going to be able to put up all of those points? Maybe they do. Maybe it's going to be, 50-50 and, or whatever, right? Maybe there's going to be a ton of points scored on Thursday night, and we're going to be, I personally will be eating my words this time next week when that game is probably rolling into the third or fourth quarter when we start the show, and it's a track meet, but that number scares me, man. That's one I would personally stay away from. I like the spread as well on this. I would take the 6.5. I think Boise's the better football team, even though they're on the road. I think they win this one by at least a touchdown, so I would stick with the spread as well. So some player props, Trev. This one's interesting because there are no player props out there just yet because this game is, a good deal away. It's a week away.
The one thing that's tough about betting on college football games is unlike the NFL, the player props don't really come out a week in advance.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to wait a little bit. Now, what I did is Vince and I wanted to make sure that we were still able to give you guys something. We didn't want to say, hey, there's no player props yet, so sorry. But this game will already have been played by the time that we go live next. They kick off at 5:30 p.m. next Thursday on ESPN. So here's some things to look out for. I would be on the lookout for Sire Gaines. That's Boise State's running back. So in those 2 ranked matchups that USF played in last year, they gave up 140 rushing yards to Jam Miller at Alabama, and they also gave up 104 rushing yards to Jordan Lyle at Miami. Now, I know I said that the offenses as a whole aren't that comparable, but Sire Gaines at Boise State is much more of a comparable running back to like a Jordan Lyle or a Jam Miller than the entire offense is to the entire offense, if that makes sense. So depending on what his line is, in college, it's a little different than it is in the NFL, But if it's somewhere around that like 65.5 mark rushing yards for Boise State for Sire Gaines, I think that is something that I would hammer and take the over. I think they're going to look to establish the run quickly. Maddox Madsen comes back at quarterback for them. The receiving core is a little bit of a rebuilding year for them in a sense. They lost Prince Strachan. He's now at USC, but their tight end, Matt Lauder, comes back. Be another one I'd keep an eye on for his receiving core as well, the tight end for Boise State. Vince, what do you think about Byron Brown, the USF quarterback? Would you keep an eye out on anything for him?
Yeah, I think that his rushing yards is something to take a look at. He went for over 100 yards on the ground against Alabama, which is saying something. I mean, it's still Alabama, and he went for 74 against Bethune-Cookman and 72 against USM in 24. So I just think that there's some opportunity here for Byron Brown to get some rushing yards. So keep on the lookout for what that number is going to look like when you're looking at the over-under numbers for rushing yards for a quarterback. It's always interesting, and if Vegas doesn't do their homework, that might be a way to steal a little bit of money from the smart guys over there on the West Coast. So I would kind of be paying attention to that one.
No, that's such a good pick, man. I mean, last season, Boise State played UNLV twice. Their quarterback was Haj Malik Williams, and in those two games, he went for $161 on the ground.
There you
go. I would definitely keep an eye on Byron Brown's USF's quarterback, his over-under for rushing yards. Vince, I know you kind of hinted at it earlier, but what is your one keep away for this?
Yeah, game? Like I said, the over-under at 63.5 is my keep away. That's a huge number in week one. Offenses are usually a little shaky. I mean, depending on the competition, obviously, but this is not a gimme game for Boise State by any stretch of the imagination, and they're on the road. All of those different things kind of come into play for me. And so I'm staying away from the over-under of 63.5. How about you?
I know this is going to kind of contrast what I said about loving the spread at Boise State at -6.5, but the one thing I'm staying away from is money line, just because of the odds. Boise State to win this game, their money line is at -225. And look, man, the Broncos, they're opening up on the road. They don't have Ashton Jeanty anymore. I love some of the experience that they bring back, but let's call it what it is. Jeanty was, the runner-up in the Heisman race last year. He was their offense.
Yep.
I don't know if Maddox Madsen is the type of guy to put the team on his back and kind of open up the offense, and I just don't love it for the odds. So for that game, I'm saying this without knowing what some of the player props are going to be. I mean, if it comes out and they think Maddox Madsen is going to go for 282 passing yards, I'm staying away from that one too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not touching money line for this game. Just don't think the odds are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of question marks with Boise State.
Our final game we're going to talk about, we're heading to the Carolinas, East Carolina at NC State. A lot of people high on NC State this year, coming off a 6-7 season. 7 o'clock, ACC Network. We will be on live probably around the second quarter of this game. And this is a rematch of the Military Bowl that ended in crazy fashion last year with the Harris kid going for 86 yards to win the game, which was nuts all by itself. But the big three here, Trev, spread NC State favored by 11.5. Big number for NC State. Money line is a big number in the wrong direction. If you think NC State is going to win, not going to be a whole lot of return on your dollar at -430. And then the over-under pushing 60, 59.5. Anything stand out?
The one that stands out for me on this one is East Carolina to cover at -11.5, +11.5 is kind of intriguing to me.
Okay.
Because I love what NC State has coming back on offense. I'm going to get into that when we start talking about a little bit of the player props that haven't came out yet. But NC State's defense is a big question to me. I do think that they win, but with their money line at being -430, it's just not worth betting on. I would be very interested between the big three. I would heavily think about putting something down on East Carolina to cover at +11.5. That one's intriguing to me because they could still lose by 10 and the bet would still hit.
True. 11.5 is a lot of points. It's a lot of points. And college spreads are different because a lot of times there's more blowouts and things of that nature. And you don't see a lot of double-digit spreads in the professional game in the NFL. You see it a lot of times, especially these early on games in college, but still 11.5 is a lot of points. And East Carolina's not a pushover. I mean, they were 8-5 last year, right? So
they won last year in this matchup.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Case in point. So 11.5 is a big number here, even though it is NC State's home game and East Carolina's on the road.
Now, for player props, similar to what we talked about, since this game isn't until next Thursday, the player props aren't out yet. But what is one thing, Vince, that you think that we should be keeping an eye on for this game?
Well, we haven't talked about any wide receivers yet, Trev, and I think this is a good time to maybe highlight a little wide receiver action, and that's Justin Jolly and his receiving yards. Because when CJ Bailey took over, Jolly finished the season with 5 games of over 50 yards, and you're going to see a lot of props for wide receivers under 50 yards. There's going to be 25, 35, in that neighborhood. And we all know one big play could get you the over right then and there, right? And so keep an eye out on Justin Jolly and what that number is set at. If it's somewhere in the 30s, I feel pretty good about taking the over on that one, Trev.
Well, the nice thing about this too is Justin Jolly, he was one of their leading receivers from last year, but he's a tight end. And normally those over-under for receiving yards for tight ends, unless you are a Penn State fan and you were unfortunately trying to bet on Tyler Warren last year, whose over-under was routinely set at like 90 yards. I would really like the odds for a Justin Jolly over, like you said. Honestly, if it's anything over 40 yards, I'd feel comfortable with it, to be honest.
Okay.
Like around that 40 mark feels really good for him. And then last one, player prop for me, keep an eye on CJ Bailey, the starting quarterback at NC State for rushing yards. He finished the regular season with games of 36, 83, and 54 rushing yards. And he also rushed for 24 yards against East Carolina in the bowl game. And if you guys remember watching that game, if you did or didn't, the weather sucked. I mean, it was gross outside. It was like 20 degrees. It was raining. It was not great. So I think that also played a factor into him not rushing for as many yards. But CJ Bailey is poised for a big season. If any of you guys listen to the Irish Breakdown podcast, you know that our guy Brian Driscoll loves him some CJ Bailey. And so he's due for a big season. I would like his rushing yards depending on what the line is.
So what are you staying away from? One to stay away from in this game?
I'm staying away from the over-under, man. It's set at 59.5. I'm just not that confident. NC State's offense, it's in a good spot. It is. And I don't know if their offense is as much of a question mark as I initially thought. I like CJ Bailey. I like some of the receiver additions that they made. High on Justin Jolly. But the reason why I don't know if it's going to reach 59.5 for the over is East Carolina has a new running back. Rajay Harris is gone. And that was a big focal point in their offense. Like I said, he housed at 86 yards to seal the bowl game the last time they met. And they picked up a new quarterback who is fine. He started a little bit last year. He's okay. He ended the season with 2,000 passing yards. I just think that NC State's going to have more of the horses. I don't know if East Carolina is going to score enough for the over to hit on this one.
I like it. The over-under always scares me when it's high like that in game one. So that's one I would stay away from as well.
Well, let's dive into here the next segment on this, Vince. Second to last one, we're going through locks and drops. And basically what we do, like I said, Vince and I each picked a lock for the week. And we're also picking one bet that we're going to stay away from. We picked different ones. This one's going to be interesting because one of ours is very different. But I'll kick us off. My lock for the week is Nebraska's spread at -6.5. Odds when I looked at it this morning was -115. I think Cincinnati's due for a pretty rough season. They lost their top 3 receivers and a stud running back from last year. Nebraska is going into year 2 with Dylan Raiola at quarterback and year 3 of Matt Rule, their head coach. I like their portal pickups at receiver with Neziah Hunter and Dane Key. And Cincinnati ended their season on a 5-game losing streak last year, losing by 11, 7, 17, 26, and 7. And so my lock for the week is Nebraska, even though I think they're on the road. Nebraska spread at -6.5 is my lock. What about you, Vince?
So my lock is actually going to be Stanford at Hawaii. And right now, Stanford is a dog on the road at Hawaii, which is interesting because they're 4-0 all time against Hawaii. And Hawaii hasn't exactly been blowing the doors off of people And I realize we all know that Stanford has been a train wreck over the last few years, but Hawaii is not a whole lot better. Since Timmy Chang, the head coach, took over his alma mater in 2022, Hawaii has 0-6 against Power 4 programs. And again, I realize Stanford is barely a Power 4 program, but they still are that. And Hawaii has not notched a win against a Power 4 program yet. And they last beat a Power 4 team in 2019 when they opened up with back-to-back wins over Arizona and Oregon State. So this one for me, I'm taking Stanford plus the 2.5. I think they're probably going to win outright. If you took them on the money line, it's plus 104, so pretty decent money there. I'm taking it a little bit, not taking quite as much of a chance, taking Stanford plus the 2.5 points. So even if they lost by 2 points, you can still win a little bit of money there. I believe the odds, if you take the 2.5, are set at minus 115. So just about even money there. But I like Stanford here on the road, going to Hawaii. Everybody talks about how difficult it is to go to Hawaii. I get it. Stanford, come on, Andrew Luck, help me out here. Get me a win in week 1. Frank Reich, all of the stuff. I think they can go down there and get a win against the Fighting Rainbows.
Love it. Vince, ask me what my drop is this week.
Yes, I will ask you what your drop is, because the funny thing here, guys, is we kind of put our stuff together and then we bring it together. And of course, Trev, your drop is what?
It's really any of the big 3 against Stanford at Hawaii. Look, man, the spread right now, Vince talked about it. It's Hawaii minus 2.5. The money line is Hawaii at minus 125, and the over-under for the game is 50.5. Here's the reason why, because you bring up a lot of valid points. The reason why I'm staying away from it is because I literally could not tell you how this game is going to go.
I know. I get it.
Hawaii finished the last season on a train wreck. Stanford finished 3-9 for the 3rd year in a row. Stanford has an interim head coach. It's Frank Reich. They lost 27 players to the transfer portal. Hawaii won 5 games in 2024, but 2 of them were FCS schools. And so one of the reasons why I'm staying away from this one is all the signs point to Stanford should be able to go on the road and win against Hawaii, a team that hasn't beaten, you said, a Power 4 school since 2019?
Yep. Pre-COVID, baby.
Yeah. So, gosh, that brings up nightmares, man. What was it? Stanford hadn't beaten a Power 4 opponent in what, like 2 seasons until they went to South Bend in 2022 and beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, sorry for ruining everybody's night. At least mine. Not really. But I'm staying away from this one because I just don't – this game could go either way. Stanford has been such a train wreck that I just can't confidently say I think they're going to win or I think they cover or anything like that. But you do bring up some good points, Fitz.
Fair enough.
You do bring up some good points.
My drop of the week is I'm staying as far away from Duke versus Elon, specifically the spread. Duke is favored by 33.5 points, Trev, which is a lot of points. These guys played each other last year, and Duke won 26-3. So they only won by 23 points last year, and they didn't win a single game last year by more than 30 points. Their closest one was by 28 over Middle Tennessee, and most of their games were single-digit wins. Now, I realize this is year 2 in the regime, and maybe they got some other things figured out. I just have a hard time seeing Duke pull away and win by 34 or more points. And so I would stay away from this. It's just a big number early in the season. What does Duke have offensively? What does it look like? It's just a lot of points, man. And so Elon's a decent team. They stumbled early on last season, but they finished the season fairly strong. So I just think Elon's going to stay inside that 33.5. So I would stay away from taking Duke minus 33.5 here.
I don't blame you. I think Duke last year might have had the most unimpressive 9-win season in the history of college football.
So true. Every game was a single-digit game, like every single game, which look, you can build a great foundation winning those types of games, but you're right. It was just kind of unimpressive. They just kind of did it very, very quietly and ended up with 9 wins. It was wild.
Well, Vince, let's take this home and let's end this show with our dogs of the week. Now, our dog of the week could be an underdog that we're just predicting the money line, and we think that they'll just outright upset the opponent, or we could be talking about somebody to cover spread. which is the direction that I'm going with. I am going with Miami, Ohio, the Red Hawks, to cover their spread of plus 17.5 on the road against Wisconsin. Now, here's why. The Badgers lost their last 5 games, all by double digits, for whatever reason, except to Oregon, the number 1 team in the country at the time. But 3 of those 5 losses were at home. Last year, they beat South Dakota. They beat South Dakota and Western Michigan, but they only beat them both by 14. Now, I'm kind of putting Miami of Ohio on the same level as the South Dakota and the Western Michigan. I'm not high on the Badgers this season. Miami of Ohio, they finished last season winning 8 of their last 9 games. They lost in the conference championship, but then I believe they bounced back and won their bowl game. You know, they played 3 Power 4 schools last year, and they lost all 3 of them. They lost to Northwestern, they lost to Cincinnati, and then they lost to Notre Dame. But they lost to Northwestern by 7, and they lost to Cincinnati by 9. Now, they lost to Notre Dame by 25 in South Bend, but if you go back and watch that game, yes, Notre Dame won by 25, and it's because the final score was 28-3. It wasn't 50-25.
Right.
And so I put Wisconsin kind of more on the level of Cincinnati Northwestern. I think they're closer to them than I think they are closer to Notre Dame. A little biased, but I mean, that's how I view Wisconsin this year. So I really, really like Miami of Ohio, my dog of the week, to cover.
All right. I've got an interesting one, kind of one that's a little bit off the beaten path. My dog of the week is Jacksonville State. And that might ring a bell for some people because that's where Rich Rodriguez was before he returned to West Virginia this season. And so they have a new head coach, and they are going on the road to UCF, where Scott Frost is back in charge of UCF after we'll just call it an interesting trip up north to attempt to coach his alma mater. But UCF was waiting with open arms to bring him back. The spread right now is 17.5 points. I think Jacksonville State has a chance of getting inside that 17.5. I'm not saying that they're going to be an outright winner. If I was, those odds are plus 640. And so if you're real confident in Jacksonville State going on the road and winning this game, you can win a lot of money at plus 640. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they get inside the 17.5. It's minus 105, so pretty much even money at that point. I think that a lot of points are going to be scored. The over-under is 53.5. I would take the over on this one. I think they're going to go up and down the field. And when there's a lot of points scored, generally, the score is a little bit closer. So I feel like Jacksonville State can stay inside the 17.5. They are the reigning Conference USA champs. They know what it's like to win. I think they go down there and they give good old Scott Frost just a little, they're going to scare him a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they are going to scare him a little bit. So my dog of the week is Jacksonville State, Trev.
Love that pick. Love that. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it here for us on the spread option on the CFB Nation channel. Now, before you head out of here, please be sure to hit that like button. It helps with the algorithm. We are really trying to blow this account up, trying to blow up this channel over the course of this season. There's going to be a lot of good content coming your way. Vince and I will be back again live next Thursday at 8 p.m., and that's when we kind of cover all of week 1. But ladies and gentlemen, there's college football on our TVs in, really a day and a half.
Yes, 100%.
We're getting there.
And I did want to respond to ICURN with Irish Luck. First of all, thanks for stopping by. Said, I think you should do a follow-up show on what you got right and what you got wrong. Well, you are in luck. That's our first segment every week moving forward, because we're going to hold ourselves accountable here. We're going to see where we're at. But there's nothing to talk about today because we didn't have a show last week. And so we kind of skipped that section. But we will definitely do that from here on out and just show you guys either, hey, man, we're pretty good at this, or we got a lot of work to do. So we'll see.
Hopefully it's not the latter.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Hopefully it's not the latter. But be sure to hit the like button on your way out of here. Subscribe to this channel. Share it with anybody that you know is just a college football fan. This is not just a channel for betting. I know, Bill Bender and Bill Trocchi go live on CFB Nation as well, especially with the season coming up. They're going to be putting more content on this channel. I'm going to have a couple of solo shows on this channel. Maybe I can convince Vince to do a couple of shows with me. But listen, man, there's going to be a lot of awesome stuff here. Brian Driscoll, I know from Irish Breakdown, is going to be doing a lot of stuff on this channel as well. But please tune in next week. We'll be back next Thursday. Until then, have a wonderful evening. We'll see you back here very soon on the CFB Nation podcast.